This filthy boy was coughing hard as he rested his head against the corner of his bed. His room was a complete mess with broken glasses lying on the floor. He grabbed a rope and wondered if he really had to die. A line from the Bible echoed in his mind, the one about the devil appearing as an angel. Sometime earlier, he had been looking at a girl and thinking that many people might struggle to understand his situation, but he had witnessed everything himself. The girl had apologized, saying she felt he had been staring at her and maybe even liked her. She apologized again before asking one more time if he truly enjoyed her or not. Back in his room, he cried while thinking about revenge. He told himself he would kill everyone. A normal human could never defeat a demon, so he decided to become one instead. A camera was quietly observing the room. A girl was tied up with a rope on the floor. When she opened her eyes, she was shocked by her surroundings. She didn't recognize the place, and her head throbbed with pain. As she looked around, she screamed for help, but no one answered. Slowly, the memories of the previous night came back. She had drunk with her friend at a pension and fallen asleep. Only then did she realize she had been kidnapped. Someone was watching her through the camera, studying her every move. She tried to loosen the rope with her teeth, but failed. She felt like an animal trapped in a cage. When she finally noticed the CCTV camera in the corner, she begged whoever was behind it to let her go. She promised to do anything and swore she would never tell anyone. She shouted again, pleading for a response, but the boy on the other side of the screen listened in silence through his headphones. When no answer came, she began to cry. Her fear quickly turned into anger. She insulted the camera and barked at her unseen captor to release her. She shouted that he didn't even know her, that he couldn't possibly think he would avoid arrest after doing something like this, and that kidnapping someone in Korea wasn't something anyone could get away with. Then she sensed something. The door creaked open, and a boy stepped inside. She stared at him, confused, and asked who he was. He gave her a faint smile and greeted her casually, saying it had been a long time Kim Minji. Hearing her own name shocked her. She didn't understand what he meant by long time no see. She had never met him before. She tried to remember. Clubs, bars, nothing matched his face. He smiled again and said she was a good actress if she truly didn't remember him. She tried to speak, but he suddenly took out a pair of broken glasses and placed them on her face. He said she should recognize him now. The moment she saw herself reflected in his expression, she froze. It was Saboro. He smiled warmly and said it had been a long time since anyone had called him that, meaning she must remember him after all. He thanked her, admitting he had been worried she might have forgotten him. He started to say more, but she cut him off. She told him that if he let her go right now, she would forgive him. Once the police used the CCTV footage, finding him would be simple, so he should release her while he still had the chance. Minji promised she would leave before the police arrived. She said she would pretend nothing had happened and begged him to trust her. Saboro looked at her and asked why. If she wanted a favor, she couldn't at least call him by his real name instead of his nickname. He wondered aloud if she even knew his name, since she had never used it in the first place. Her expression cooled, and she answered politely that too much time had passed. That was why she couldn't remember it. She added that if all of this were about something that happened back in high school, she would apologize now. She admitted she should never have acted the way she did back then, even if she thought it was just a harmless joke between friends. She said she had been immature and that she was genuinely sorry. He smiled and said they should sit down and talk first. Then he suddenly grabbed her hair and yanked her toward the chair. She screamed in pain, furious that he was hurting her even after she had given him a chance. She warned him that once she got out of there, he would regret everything. He threw her onto the chair and she shouted that he was a psychopath. She demanded to know if he really thought he would escape punishment. She told him the police would find him, lock him up for at least 10 years, and she cursed him as an idiot. When he pulled at her clothes, she cried out and swore she would kill him herself for daring to do this. She called him a bug who had no idea of his place. His response was a hard slap across her face. Her nose began to bleed. He smiled with a disturbing calm and told her she was the foolish one. She had given him the perfect excuse if the police ever came. He would say it was just a joke between friends, just like the ones she used to play on him. Now it was his turn to joke with her. Her eyes widened and a cold fear ran down her spine as she suddenly understood exactly what he meant. After hearing his twisted explanation, Minji forced herself to calm down. Saboro pointed at her and said they still needed to talk about something important. He told her that from this moment onward, there were rules she would have to follow. When she asked what rules he meant, he nodded and said there were only a few. She just needed to keep 3 simple things in mind. He made it sound easy. The first rule, he said, was that she would obey every order given by Kim Jo-won. She looked deeply offended and demanded to know what he meant by completely obey. She wanted to hear exactly what kind of orders he expected. Instead of explaining, he tossed a capsule-shaped object onto the table. She picked it up and asked what it was. He pressed a button, and the toy began to vibrate and move across the surface. Confused, she asked if it was some kind of lip tint. He burst into loud laughter, saying he didn't expect such an answer from her and that she wasn't that innocent. He told her that she would use it to strengthen her finger muscles right in front of him. It was an order. She froze at the sound of his command, then grabbed the toy and threw it at his face. He caught it effortlessly. She barked back that she would not follow any of his orders. He reminded her that he had already threatened to kill her, yet all he wanted at the moment was a simple workout session. He mocked her, thinking she must be stupid if she believed he wanted some kind of cardio session. He said he had already done plenty of that. Laughing again, he told her he once thought she was an innocent angel, but it turned out she was actually a full cardio trainer. His words stunned her. She demanded to know what he was talking about. He shoved her hard in the stomach and said she should keep barking because it sounded like she really wanted a wholesome cardio session. She fell to the floor, gasping for air. He watched her with amusement while she cursed him through her pain, telling him police would kill him once they found out what he had done. He smiled calmly and said he knew she wanted another beating. He walked toward a locker while she watched him from the corner of her eye. He picked up a long metal rod and said he didn't understand why people ever said nice things about someone like her. It confused him. Holding up the pipe, he told her it was the perfect treatment for a girl like her. Minji begged to know why he was doing all of this and told him to put the pipe away. He sighed and said she was still barking, wondered aloud if he should have brought a knife instead of a pipe. Then he told her to get ready. She pleaded with him to stop. She told him she couldn't get up because he had punched her earlier. She admitted she had only tried to scare him at first and never imagined he would turn out to be an animal. He ignored her fear and started forcing her hands to grip the pipe, telling her it was to strengthen her fingers. She let out a nervous laugh, which only made him angrier. He struck her with the pipe and warned her that if she didn't want more hits, she needed to listen and respond clearly. But she stayed silent. She refused to give him an answer. His patience thinned. He took out the capsule toy again and forced her to use it to continue the twisted finger muscle training he demanded. Minji finally opened her mouth and said she would answer his questions. Saboro nodded with satisfaction and continued listing the rules. The second rule, he said, was simple. If she followed an order well, she would be rewarded. The third rule was the opposite. If she disobeyed or failed to carry out an order properly, she would be punished. Hearing this, she silently questioned her own emotions, wondering how she had ended up in such a nightmare. Later, he sat in the room smoking and announced that he was going to eat. He told her to clean up after herself before he returned and demanded a response. She said yes, and he walked toward the door. Exhaustion weighed on her as she wondered why he was acting like this. Before leaving, he said he would make her feel good when he came back, telling her to look forward to it. After he left, she dragged herself upright, furious that he had dared to touch her, force her to use that toy, and hit her until she submitted. She thought about her father, a man who could ruin lives with a single word. People had always treated her carefully because of that. Now she had to stay calm. Her friend must have already noticed she was missing. By now, the police were likely searching for her. She just needed to endure this psychopath until they found her. Once she escaped, she would make sure he spent the rest of his life rotting in prison. She promised herself that. Then she collapsed onto the floor and drifted into sleep. Sometime later, he returned and woke her with a nudge from his foot. She asked for water. He mocked her for falling asleep on the floor after an exhausting workout session. She snapped back, calling him a loser. She said he was proud of himself for kidnapping one girl and forcing her to do this, that he was destined to live at the bottom of society like an insect, dying without ever holding a girl's hand. She said she finally understood why he had gone this far, just to experience some twisted version of a cardio session with a girl. He smiled, amused. He asked if she really thought she could protect her pride even now. Her voice was cracking from thirst, yet she still found the energy to insult him. That, he said, was what made her Kim Minji. It wouldn't be any fun taming her if she acted any differently. He placed a box on the table and said he had prepared something for her. When she demanded to know what it was, he opened it and revealed a dog collar. He told her she should be happy because he had brought it for her. She snapped back, asking if he actually believed she was an animal. He warned her to watch her tone. He wasn't surprised she wouldn't wear it peacefully, but he hadn't planned to give her the choice anyway. He kicked her hard, asking if she felt like wearing it now. She growled in pain and finally said she would put it on. Then he began humiliating her, pleased by her submission. He opened a water bottle and drank right in front of her. She stared at him with desperate eyes and called out, demanding water, begging, "Please give me water, master." He praised her for finally understanding. From now on, he said she needed to learn that simple concept. If she did what he told her to do, he would slowly grant her the things she wanted. She thanked him, relieved that she might finally get to drink. But Instead of handing her the bottle, he poured the water into a dog bowl and told her to drink it. Minji stared at the bowl in disbelief. She asked if he didn't feel even a little pity. She wasn't asking for much, just water. She begged him to at least treat her like a human being. She knelt, acting as pitiful as she could, hoping he would soften. He paused, put a hand on her head, and said she was right. Maybe he had been a bit too harsh. He claimed he wasn't a psychopath and promised to treat her better if she listened well. Shocked, Minji praised herself silently for getting through to him. But then he added that before he could treat her better, he needed to check if she would truly obey. He poured it into the dog bowl and ordered her to drink it without using her hands. She stared at her reflection in the water, panicked. If he wanted her to drink it, she told herself she would hold her breath and get it over with. Part of her whispered that she should refuse, but she was too thirsty. At her limit, she lowered her face to the bowl and drank. Saboro recorded her on his phone, saying she should be grateful. He had given her a home, fed her water, and allowed her to repent, but she only apologized verbally. She had never told him how she planned to compensate him. He said he could spread her photos if he wanted. She pleaded, saying she had only been focused on listing her mistakes because that's what he demanded. She begged him to guide her on how to compensate him. She promised to repent for the rest of her life if that's what he wanted. He stood up and headed to the door, saying he had no idea yet, so he would give her an hour to figure it out. Deciding how to compensate him would be part of her repentance, he said. While writing her reflection letter, she should think carefully about every wrong she had done and how she would make amends. She agreed, watching him leave, thinking he was the most complicated and unpredictable person she had ever encountered. The boy stood alone in the park, tending the barbecue grill as the smoke drifted lazily into the evening air. As he turned the meat, his thoughts wandered to the woman he had confined. She was still in her 20s, blessed with a striking appearance and a youthful, well-shaped body. He wondered whether society valued her only for these traits, or whether she herself believed that her pride and status were enough to survive any situation. Deep down, he already knew the answer, even if she refused to admit it to herself. Inside the locked room, the woman inhaled the scent of grilled meat as it seeped through the air. Her stomach growled uncontrollably, reminding her of how desperately hungry she was. Still, her pride would not allow her to voice her need, especially not to someone who treated her as if she were insignificant. The door eventually opened, and the boy stepped inside, wearing a wide, almost cheerful smile. Casually, he asked how she was feeling and whether she wanted to eat. Overcome by fear and desperation, she suddenly spoke of money. She offered him anything he wanted, insisting that her family had more than enough and begging him to let her go. The boy listened, not with sympathy, but with curiosity, as though he were deciding whether her words amused him. He claimed he would reward her if she gave him an answer he liked. Holding the plate of barbecue just out of reach, he let her stare at it, fully aware of her hunger. Then, without warning, he turned back toward the door and told her he would return the next day. Shock washed over her as she realized he was taking the food with him. Anger replaced her fear, and she cursed him for his cruelty. In response, he struck her and hurled insults, mocking her weakness. When he pretended to act kindly, she snapped back in frustration, unable to contain herself any longer. That was when he chained her more tightly and coldly warned her that if she behaved like an animal, he would treat her like one. He claimed he would take care of her only if she obeyed him completely. She screamed in pain and begged for forgiveness, her voice breaking as she apologized. He laughed, remarking that even dogs learned to listen after being beaten. With the plate still in his hand, he told her she would be given another chance tomorrow before leaving her alone once again. Later that night, she sat in the darkness, scribbling thoughts onto a scrap of paper, cursing him under her breath and forcing herself to plan carefully. She believed that if she acted wisely, her escape might still be possible, but the pain in her stomach returned, sharper than before. It had been 2 days since she last ate, and she had never known hunger like this. She realized that whether she escaped or not, she might die if this continued. At that moment, she noticed a small piece of barbecue on the floor within sight, but just beyond reach. She stretched toward it desperately, only to be pulled back by the chain. Tears streamed down her face as she blamed him for everything that had happened. Then, she heard movement outside. The door burst open and 2 police officers rushed in. One of them spoke urgently into his phone, confirming they had located the victim and requesting a stretcher. They also reported that the suspect had been arrested. When a man approached her to help, she broke down, crying and pleading for him to hurry. Later, in a bar, she sat with her friends, slowly sipping juice and trying to feel normal again. One of them called the boy a psychopath, saying he had nearly destroyed her life. When they asked her questions about him, she refused to answer. All she wanted was to remain in that moment of calm. She reflected on how much she had taken simple things for granted before. Back then, all she had wanted was a piece of barbecue, and she now realized how close happiness had truly been. As she tried to eat, tears fell again, and she promised herself she would protect the freedom she had regained. Suddenly, her eyes snapped open. It had all been a dream. She struggled to her feet, her heart racing, and told herself she had to escape no matter what. She swore she would survive and make him pay for what he had done. Unbeknownst to her, a CCTV camera watched her every move. From another room, the boy observed her on the screen, smiling as he mocked her determination. He believed that things were only enjoyable and she still had hope. Holding a photograph of a man in his hand, he murmured that this was how he intended to break her completely. The camera blinked with tiny shifts in its frame, picking up the smallest motions in the dimly lit room. She noticed it immediately and recoiled. From where she sat on the cold floor, she whispered to herself that he was a true psychopath. Even now, he watched her every movement without a shred of regard for her privacy. The thought of it spreading beyond this room made her shudder. But she stopped herself. She could not allow her mind to wander to what the world might think. After all, he did not want anyone to imagine such a thing. To him, she was no more than a caged animal. Her body rebelled against the filth and confinement. The biological urges of hunger and discomfort clawed at her. Not having eaten in more than 2 days, she found her thoughts drifting desperately to food. Somewhere warm, a plate of chicken washed down with juice, then slipping into a comfortable bed. But that was a memory from another life. Here, she had only the cold concrete beneath her and the weight of her fears pressing down on her. Worse than hunger was the need for a toilet. She was not an animal, yet the urgency became impossible to ignore. Spotting a thin pad on the floor, she reluctantly used it. Once finished, she pressed herself against the wall and vowed under her breath that she would kill him if she ever escaped. She steeled herself. She must endure, no matter what. A faint glow caught her eye under the pad. Curious and desperate to understand, she crawled toward it. Just then, the door creaked open and he stepped inside without warning. "You sleep well?" he asked with a casual tone, as if she had merely stayed over at a friend's house. He complained about how uncomfortable it must be to sleep on a hard floor. She instinctively lied, insisting she slept fine. In that moment, she wondered if he truly cared for her discomfort or if he was merely acting. He knelt before her and said he must have done everything he told her to do this time. She swallowed hard, unsure what he meant, until he reached for the crumpled paper where she had written her thoughts and plans earlier. With a taunting smirk, he observed that she had used the pad more than expected, hinting that he understood her plight more than she realized. Her heart pounded as he reminded her of the order she was meant to complete for him. Trembling, she asked for more time, believing she deserved punishment for her failure. She forced her mind to churn through ideas for how she could make amends. Then, as he spoke, she froze. Hidden beneath her clothes was a metal rod she had hoped she could use if an opportunity for escape presented itself. He seemed to sense nothing. Instead, he told her that because she wanted to repent, he would forgive her this time. He would even reward her obedience. He needed food to stay strong, he said, so that he could train her. In her panic and relief, she whispered, "Thank you, master," already calculating how his plan had worked on her mind. He ordered her to think about her failure while she ate whatever he brought her, and then left the room. As the door shut behind him, she reached for the rod, ready to strike. But the moment she pulled it from beneath her, pain jolted through her collar. The electric shock forced her to collapse. His manic laughter echoed in her ears as she writhed with pain. "This is the answer you want," she murmured through clenched teeth, more to convince herself than him. When he returned with a plate of food, his smile was cold. "I brought food for you," he said, "but as expected, people do not change." She cursed herself for thinking she could deceive him. She told herself she only pretended to repent out of fear, not sincerity. Then her eyes caught something small glinting on the floor. She thought it was a key, her mistake. His hand brushed her head, almost gently, as he spoke softly. "You were right," he said. "We have to end this. I will set you free." Her breath caught. She needed to hear it again. He asked her if she would rather be free or continue to feel comfortable here. Then his tone shifted. He admitted it was wrong to think he could tame her. An animal that resisted could only be destroyed. He said he could not kill her with his own hands, but he would make sure she never returned from whatever fate he had planned for her. Her mind screamed that escape, like in the movies, was impossible here. The thought twisted into fear as a cold shiver ran down her spine. She believed this was the end. There was no other way. In desperation, she leapt forward and grabbed his feet, tears streaming down her cheeks. Through sobs, she begged him to believe she could be what he wanted. If he wanted a slave, she would become one. She begged to endure whatever punishment he chose, even offering to train with him, to spend years proving her devotion. She pleaded for just one chance to show that she would be different. When Jiwon finally came back to his senses, he realized he had been watching her all along. Only it wasn't the woman trapped in that dark room. Instead, he found himself observing Kim Min-ji, the class goddess at his school. She sat at a lunch table, surrounded by classmates. her hands twisting nervously as they discussed her recent trip to the hair salon. Minji complained about the way her hair turned out. She was adamant she would never return to that salon again. One friend tried to soothe her, saying it wasn't a big deal, but Minji grew more agitated. She pointed out that the friend offering comfort was the very person who had recommended the salon in the first place. Another girl teased her playfully, saying that even if Minji had gone bald, there would still be plenty of boys who wanted her. Minji laughed at the exaggeration, but before she could relax, another friend jumped in and declared it was true. In their eyes, Minji was the official first love of their class, beauty everyone noticed. Rumor had it that she wasn't dating anyone, but that didn't stop speculation. When Minji teased her friends about it, saying, "If an outcast likes me," her gaze drifted unconsciously to the front row of the cafeteria. Sure enough, she spotted a boy sitting there with a quiet expression. One of her friends scoffed and added that outcasts tended to have impossibly high standards anyway. Minji shook her head in disagreement, though doubt flickered through her thoughts. Just then, another friend whispered an idea. "He's always sneaking glances at you," she said, nodding toward the boy. "We offered it to him." Before Minji could even respond, one of her classmates grabbed her phone, called her name loudly, and shoved it into Minji's hand. "We'll see you later," she said with a grin. With that, the group walked off, leaving Minji standing awkwardly beside Jiwon's desk. Trying to steady her voice, Minji leaned closer. She meant to ask Jiwon something important. Jiwon began hesitantly. "He really likes me." Jiwon, caught off guard, immediately denied it. He insisted there was nothing about him that made him capable of loving someone like her. Inside, he flinched, unsure how to respond. His heart conflicted between honesty and embarrassment. Minji blushed, thinking he must assume she was serious about a romantic interest. The situation felt humiliating, with other girls watching and whispering. She forced a small smile and apologized. "I thought maybe you were looking at me. Maybe you liked me as I liked you." Her voice softened as she tried to explain herself with an expression that was half playful, half vulnerable. Before she could finish, one of their classmates burst out laughing. "Kim Ji-won probably just has high standards," she teased. "That's why he's not saying anything." A ripple of laughter spread around the lunch area. Minji's cheeks flushed hotter, caught between embarrassment and an attempt to laugh it off. She joked that there was no way he could date her in his current condition. Ji-won, flustered and awkward, mumbled that he had been joking too. But the damage was done. What had begun as a trivial moment, just gossip and misplaced confidence, quickly turned into something so humiliating that Ji-won felt it everywhere. Whispers followed him through the lunch area, teasing and speculative. He could feel every pair of eyes on him as rumors about his supposed feelings for Kim Minji spread like wildfire. Minji, meanwhile, felt the awkward weight of the moment hanging in the air. Neither of them knew what to say, yet the memory of that brief, misinterpreted exchange lingered in both their minds long after the laughter died down. Suddenly, a boy burst into the classroom and loudly asked for Lee Ji-won. The room fell silent for a moment, and Ji-won felt every pair of eyes turn toward him. He barely had time to react before he was dragged away. Later, in the school bathroom, several boys surrounded him. One of them mocked him, waving a small stack of tissues and sneering that there were only 6 sheets. He accused Ji-won of joking with them. Ji-won apologized repeatedly, explaining that it was all he had been able to collect. The bully scoffed, saying apologies would not magically turn into money. Ji-won tried to explain further, admitting that his parents had grown suspicious of him, which only made the boys laugh louder. The bully chuckled and said he would give Ji-won a discount. Pointing toward the toilet, he ordered him to wash his face, mocking him by saying the toilet bowl was his sink. When Ji-won lifted his head from the filthy water, shaking and humiliated, he begged for forgiveness. He promised he would find a way to pay. The bully responded with a disturbing laugh, barking that he did not want money at all. He was doing it for entertainment. Without warning, the bully kicked Ji-won in the back and shoved his head into the toilet again. Ji-won struggled desperately, his body trembling as he gasped for air. He begged for mercy, his voice breaking, but the laughter around him only grew louder. Later, Ji-won, now referred to as Saboro by those who tormented him, was kneeling on the floor in a dimly lit area, barely able to lift his head. The bully stood before him with 2 girls. One of the girls complained casually that someone was not listening to her anymore and that maybe he was tired of her. She reminded the bully that he had promised her he would stop smoking. Trying to cheer her up, the bully focused all his attention on her. She brushed his hand away and walked off without another word. When he asked what was wrong, she snapped back rudely, saying he would never understand how men played their games. Her dismissal enraged him. With his pride wounded, he turned his anger towards Saboro. He pressed the burning tip of his cigarette against Saboro's face. Saboro screamed in pain, his body jerking forward. One of Minji's friends whispered that maybe this had gone too far, but Minji dismissed it coldly. She claimed he was only enduring it because he wanted to, and that she did not care. The bully sneered, calling Saboro a noisy ashtray. He forced Saboro's mouth open and dumped cigarette ash inside, ordering him to clean up the mess around them. Saboro obeyed, enduring every moment in silence. Each humiliation carved deeper into his mind, making him wish for death. Yet, strangely, he did not resent himself for wanting to die. Instead, his survival instinct forced him to endure, pulling himself together again and again. Later that night, Saboro returned to his apartment. The moment he stepped inside, he fell to his knees in front of Minji. He bowed his head and apologized over and over, calling himself ugly and insisting he never meant to upset her. He told her he had no bad intentions, that everything had been misunderstood. He confessed that whether he had endured the humiliation by holding on or resisting, he had gambled on surviving one last time. Through tears, he begged her to believe it had only been a joke and to please let him go. He clung to the faint hope that somewhere inside her, a trace of kindness still existed. His voice cracked as he begged for forgiveness again. In the present, the roles had reversed. Now it was Minji who begged him, crying for mercy for what he had done to her, the weight of the past pressing heavily between them. Saboro told her that she wanted him to trust her, but deep down, she knew he could not do that so easily. In desperation, she insisted that her body was the only thing of value she had left. With tears in her eyes, she begged him, saying she had nothing else to offer. Saboro hesitated, and for a brief moment, a hint of softness appeared in his expression. Finally, he agreed, but his voice turned cold as he laid out his condition. From that moment on, he demanded absolute obedience. She would belong to him as his slave, and he would test her loyalty to see if she was truly capable of submitting to his will. Relief washed over her face as she thanked him repeatedly. Saboro turned away and told her to wait, explaining that he needed time to prepare something for her. He left the room, leaving her alone with her thoughts. When he eventually returned, he dragged a chair into place and sat down, setting up a camera in front of her. He casually asked whether she liked the dress he had ordered. She complained that she had worn it as instructed, but mocked him openly, saying the fabric was far too small and uncomfortable. Ignoring her tone, he switched on the camera and instructed her to begin apologizing. He made it clear that it did not matter whether the events had happened 5 or 10 years ago. What mattered was that she confessed, starting right now. She hesitated, her mind racing. She told herself that once the police caught her, it would all be over for him. Still, she forced herself to speak into the camera. She admitted that when she and Jiwon were in school together, she had bullied him relentlessly. She often hit him, took his money, and treated him like a servant, forcing him to run errands for her whenever she pleased. As she spoke, she reminded herself that survival was her only goal. She needed to endure this situation for as long as possible. From behind the camera, Jiwon yawned, clearly unimpressed. He interrupted her and said she needed to introduce herself first, reminding her that she was the one who had committed the wrongdoing. She nodded in agreement and said she would start over properly. As she began introducing herself, Jiwon commented that he should have told her to do that from the beginning. Still, he criticized her effort, saying it was far too ordinary and disappointing compared to what he had expected. She tried again, but he stopped her repeatedly, pointing out every mistake. He told her she needed to bow lower, that she had moved too quickly, and that she was not looking directly into the camera. Each correction made her hesitate more, and she repeated her introduction again and again. Eventually, she lost patience and snapped, telling him that he should explain his likes and dislikes clearly if he expected perfection from her. He cut her off mid-sentence, stating calmly that he could not feel any sincerity in her actions. He then held up a piece of paper and asked her if she remembered it. The paper contained words she herself had written, promising that she would abandon everything and obey him completely. He told her that if she wanted him to believe her, she would have to live up to those words. She fell silent, sinking into deep thought. Inside her mind, she cursed him repeatedly, telling herself that she only needed to survive this unpleasant situation. Gathering her resolve, she adjusted her clothing as instructed and restarted her introduction. This time, she lowered herself to the ground, bowing deeply as she begged for forgiveness. Jiwon tossed another piece of paper toward her and ordered her to read it aloud. When she picked it up, her eyes widened in shock. Her voice trembled as she read the words written on it. The document stated that she would serve Master Jiwon faithfully and act as his workout trainer for the next 10 years, using her best efforts. It also declared that she would repay him for every wrong she had committed against him in the past. At the end, she was required to swear to God. Jiwon let out a low, unsettling laugh as he stood and walked past her. He remarked that the arrangement was not bad and reminded her that he would give her food just as he had promised. She broke down in tears, thanking him repeatedly. Outwardly, she showed gratitude, but deep inside, she waited for the moment when she could end his life with her own hands. Later, she muttered that she was supposed to meet Minyoung that day, complaining that the bed felt as hard as stone. She closed her eyes, wishing desperately that everything she was experiencing was nothing more than a nightmare. Before she could escape into sleep, he returned and announced that it was time. Without giving her room to respond, he instructed her to begin their cardio session, marking the start of yet another ordeal. After the session ended, he led her back into the room. Inside, there was only a chair, a table, and a laptop placed neatly on top. He ordered her to sit down. As she lowered herself onto the chair, she hesitated and asked about the bet he had mentioned earlier during the workout session. She wanted to know whether she would still have to go through with it. He responded calmly, saying that if they simply forgot about the bet, it would be her loss. With a faint smirk, he added that perhaps she only wanted the workout sessions and nothing more. The implication made her stiffen, but after a brief pause, she agreed. She told him she would do it, knowing she had little choice. He instructed her to sit properly, placing her legs where he indicated. Once she was positioned, he opened a video on the laptop in front of her. It was a cardio session video, and as it began playing, he explained the rules in a measured tone. The conditions were simple. If, after watching the video daily for a full week, she failed to feel the effects of a proper cardio session, then she would be declared the winner. She laughed quietly to herself, confident and almost amused. She recognized him in the video and believed she could easily beat him at his own game. In her mind, there was no way she would lose control or fail the challenge. Her confidence bordered on arrogance. However, his reaction was unsettling. He attached strange props to inflated balloons and laughed in a low, disturbing manner, clearly enjoying her discomfort. As he slowly moved toward the door, he told her that this arrangement would last for only 6 days. His voice remained casual, as if he were discussing something trivial. Realizing what he meant, she shouted after him, her voice sharp with protest and fear. She demanded that he stop and listen to her, but he did not turn back. The door closed behind him, leaving her alone in the room, staring at the screen as the video continued to play. By the second day, she did everything she could to avoid winning against him. Throughout the day, she forced herself to remain calm and detached. That night, when the familiar urge to begin a workout session surfaced, she clenched her fists and suppressed it with sheer willpower. She reminded herself repeatedly that losing control would only play into his hands. By the third day, however, her restraint began to crumble. The effort of constantly resisting wore her down, both physically and mentally. Exhaustion finally overtook her, and she failed to hold back. Admitting defeat, she asked him to proceed with the cardio session as instructed. Without hesitation, he agreed, and the session began once more, reinforcing the power he held over her. At school, a group of boys stood chatting in the corridor. One of them casually asked about Yun, dismissing her as not his type. Another boy, heavier in build, scoffed and rated her a 4 out of 5. Someone else mocked him, saying his standards were clearly low. Unbothered, the fat boy shrugged and replied that women were judged by their figure first, look second, and that if personality was good as well, then it easily became a 5 out of 5. He added that only someone like Miss Yura could truly understand such a balance. At that moment, a calm female voice interrupted them, asking whether they were talking about her. The boys froze in shock. Nervously laughing, they insisted it was nothing and blamed their behavior on youthful energy. They addressed her respectfully as Teacher Chay, hoping she would let the matter slide. She studied them carefully and asked if something had happened. One of the boys quickly shifted the topic, complimenting her for handling both scholarship coordination and career counseling at the same time. He joked it must be difficult and offered his help. She laughed lightly, accepting the offer, but then excused herself, saying she had forgotten some learning materials. As she left, the boy muttered to his friends that they should give up. Teacher Chay returned briefly to remind them that class would start soon, and ordered them back inside. The fat boy chuckled, mentioning that Tunkyu was treating him at the canteen. She allowed them to go, but warned them not to be late. As they walked away, one boy muttered darkly that he had warned him not to be obvious, joking that he was asking for trouble. As expected of Miss Chay, discipline followed swiftly. Later that day, caught a student staring at her and immediately ordered him into a cardio punishment session. Earlier, she had noticed something strange in the empty school building and had been hearing unsettling rumors since morning. In her office, she stretched her fingers methodically, strengthening her grip as if preparing herself mentally. Suddenly, phone rang. The call from Taesu startled her. He asked whether she had seen Minji, explaining that she had been missing for several days. Miss Chai admitted she knew nothing about her disappearance. Later, sitting alone in her car, she spoke with Taesu again as he apologized for involving her. She reassured him gently and ended the call. Concerned, she began calling Minji's friends one by one, but none of them knew anything. Only one number remained: Kim Ji-won. Seeing his name triggered a memory from years ago. She recalled the day he came to her injured at claiming he had fallen. She had treated his wounds and lightened the mood with gentle scolding, telling him to be more careful. Yet she had known the truth. He had not fallen. He had needed help desperately, and she had failed to see it then. Hesitating, she considered whether it was appropriate to call him so late at night. She decided she would let the phone ring only 3 times before hanging up. But before she could do so, a mechanical voice informed her that the number no longer existed. Suddenly, a hand struck her from behind, and darkness swallowed her consciousness. When she opened her eyes, the place felt disturbingly familiar. Her body was restrained, and no one responded when she called out. Only a television stood before her. Without warning, it turned on. The screen displayed footage of Minji's cardio sessions. Every moment of Minji's suffering over the past days played out in front of her, revealing her forced obedience and life as a slave. Miss Chay stared in disbelief. She could not comprehend that such cruelty existed in the modern world. A shiver ran down her spine as fear gripped her. She could not imagine herself enduring the same fate. A voice echoed through the room, calm yet chilling. It greeted her by name, saying it had been a long time. Teacher Yura. She struggled to recognize the speaker until he reminded her of the student she had abandoned 5 years ago. Realization struck her sharply. The one who kidnapped Minji and turned her into a slave was Saboro. Panic surged as he introduced himself properly. He claimed he had not brought her there to punish her. Instead, he was giving her a chance to correct the mistake she had made years ago. He directed her attention to a remote control placed nearby. The green button, he explained, would save Minji. Without hesitation, she lunged forward, desperate to press it. He stopped her calmly and revealed the condition. If she chose to save Minji, she would take her place and become the slave instead. Frozen in her seat, she listened as he continued. Pressing the red button would allow Minji to remain enslaved, and Miss Chay would become his accomplice. Either way, he said coldly, she could not escape. No option left her innocent. No path allowed her to walk away. After their shared cardio session, Saboro told Minji that he would leave a notebook behind for her to think about everything related to serving him. He instructed her to review its contents carefully because tomorrow he would assess her progress and commitment. Once he left, she opened the notebook with a mixture of curiosity and dread. Just as she had expected, the internet on the device did not work. The only files available were a series of red-tinted videos, but there was no clear explanation of what he wanted her to learn from them. Watching the clips made her uneasy. The scenes were disjointed and unsettling, and she could not understand what behavior or lesson she was supposed to derive. It disturbed her that someone could remain so calm and controlled while watching them. Desperate to find something meaningful for him, she combed through every file and page, trying to uncover patterns or hidden meaning that might earn his approval. But every attempt ended in frustration. Nothing she found seemed to satisfy her own mind, let alone what Saboro expected. Exhausted and emotionally strained, she looked at the blanket and pillow she had been allowed to keep. For the first time that day, she felt a small sense of comfort. Though the situation was far from reassuring, having these few possessions made her feel slightly less alone. Eventually, she curled up under the blanket and fell into a restless sleep. The next morning, she dressed in the new clothes he had given her. As she looked at herself in the mirror, she muttered under her breath, criticizing his choice of attire and questioning his sense of style. In her mind, the outfit made no sense, but she reminded herself that this was part of what she was expected to do. When Saboro entered the room, she instinctively knelt before him. She announced clearly and respectfully that she was ready to serve him. He paused, taken aback by her posture and tone. It indicated to him that she had made up her mind and was prepared to take this seriously. Since it was her first attempt at demonstrating commitment in this way, he decided to accept it and told her she could pass for now. Inside, she felt a surge of relief and quiet happiness that her effort had been recognized. Saboro observed her and commented that she was capable of success when she focused her will and energy. She thanked him sincerely for acknowledging her effort. With renewed determination, she prepared herself to serve him in the way he expected. She gathered her resolve and began the next workout session, determined to show him and herself that she was willing to try. Each morning, as soon as the sun began to rise, she was required to start her day with a strict ritual. She had to wash thoroughly, dress neatly, and apply her makeup before he came to inspect her. The routine was humiliating. She resented that it was not for herself, but for Kim Ji-won, a man she thought of with nothing but contempt. It felt worse than facing death. Yet she had no choice. Every morning, she forced herself to go through the motions. When Saboro checked on her, she tried her best to appear composed and obedient. But the moment she faltered, The punishment was swift and merciless. He would strike her with sticks, treating her like an animal. Each blow was a reminder of her place and a test of her obedience. After every punishment, she cried and promised herself she would do better. In return for obedience and effort, he controlled even her basic needs. If he found her behavior satisfactory, he rewarded her with food and other necessities. If he did not, breakfast was withheld, and she was told to repent and prepare to work harder in the afternoon. This system of punishment and reward dictated her every action. She had to wake early, not for rest, not for peace, but to meet his expectations of how she should look and behave. Meals were another test of discipline. Once breakfast was served, she had to present herself again and perform the tasks he expected based on what she had practiced the previous day. After dinner and all assigned tasks were complete, she was given what he called free time. In reality, this was another period of relentless practice for servitude. She learned specific movements, phrases, and behaviors that he insisted she master. At the end of each day, she was required to write in a journal. First, she had to complete a gratitude entry. Then she had to recite aloud her pledge as a slave. The words were written for her, and she repeated them each night. She would offer total loyalty to her master and obey his commands without question. She would place his happiness above her own. She would work hard to look her best for him and present herself in her strongest condition. Each evening, after writing and recitation, she headed to bed. When she came fully awake again, reality pressed down on her like a weight. These tasks were consuming her completely. She hated every moment of it, but she felt trapped. Her body was weak from the punishments, and only his occasional rewards kept her able to endure this lifestyle. One day, after weeks of effort, he arrived with a meal that was different from the usual ration, a burger. The sight of it, wrapped in paper and warm, told her that today was special. He said little but placed it before her with an almost gentle tone. She stared at it, stunned. She thanked him quietly and began to eat. For the first time since this ordeal began, he told her she could eat with her hands. His voice was softer than usual. As she ate, tears filled her eyes. It was the first moment in a long while that he had treated her like a human being rather than an object of obedience. She clung to that moment, telling herself that if she could act like this, she could live like a human again. She hoped with all her heart that she would receive a reward like this again tomorrow. The next day, she served him with renewed determination. She dressed carefully, presented herself neatly, and performed her tasks with precision. But when Saboro observed her effort, his expression was not what she hoped for. He looked disappointed. She felt a wave of failure wash over her. Deep inside, she knew she had to push herself even harder. Her resolve hardened. Tomorrow, she would not fail. The following morning, she prepared herself once more, bracing for another review of her devotion. But when she opened the door to greet him, she was shocked to see Miss Chay standing there instead. He stepped in behind her just as she was still trying to process what she was seeing. Minji froze when her eyes met the teacher's. Shock drained the color from her face. Instinctively, she asked about the strange atmosphere of the room. But before she could say more, Teacher Chay lowered her head and apologized to Minji in a quiet, restrained voice. Sometime earlier, Teacher Chay had been seated alone in the room, the door left deliberately open. When Saboro entered, his presence filled the space immediately. He spoke calmly, almost conversationally, telling her that he knew exactly what kind of person she was. On the surface, he said she always acted kind and considerate, someone who cared deeply about her students. But when it truly mattered, she chose whatever protected her own interests. His words were sharp, yet delivered without raising his voice. Teacher Chay tried to protest, addressing him as Jihwan. She told him he could not do this, that what was happening was a crime. He interrupted her mid-sentence, thanking her instead. He said he was grateful she remembered him at all. Confused, she was about to ask what he meant when he stated flatly that Jihwan was dead. Her breath caught. She stared at him, unable to understand. He was standing right there. Seeing her reaction, he suddenly burst into laughter and admitted it had been a joke. He watched her closely as she struggled to recover. She told him she had worried about him, that something terrible might have happened to him back then. His expression darkened slightly as he replied that she was not in a position to say things anymore, not when she had become his accomplice by her silence. He added casually that he was always willing to accept a new slave. The words made her visibly uncomfortable. She opened her mouth to speak, but he raised a hand to stop her. From that moment on, he said, she was not there to ask, argue, or interfere. She was only allowed to watch. No matter what happened, she was not to say a word or take any action. She was to remain exactly as she had been 5 years ago at school, standing by and doing nothing. If she failed to follow that rule, Minji's situation would only worsen. It was simple, he explained. Silence and observation, nothing more. Minji noticed then that teacher Chay was staring at her without saying anything. Her eyes were filled with conflict and fear, but she remained frozen. To Minji, it was clear that convincing the teacher to help would not be easy. Something about Saboro's calm confidence made the situation feel even more dangerous. Whatever he was planning, it was going to be terrible. Saboro's attention shifted back to Minji. He criticized her posture, pointing out how she was standing incorrectly. She immediately apologized. Instead of responding to her, he turned to teacher Chay and ordered her to check Minji's finger strength. The command was delivered as though it were routine, stripping it of any room for refusal. After that, Saboro began the next cardio session with Minji, deliberately doing so in front of the teacher. Each movement, each instruction felt like a demonstration. Teacher Chay was forced to watch in silence, exactly as he had ordered, while Minji endured the session under his supervision. The room remained quiet, heavy with unspoken fear, as the balance of control became unmistakably clear. She had gone into the day believing a reward was waiting for her, certain that her efforts would finally be acknowledged. Instead, what awaited her was something entirely different. The teacher chose a thin object for the punishment, and each strike hurt far more than she had expected. The pain lingered, sharper than humiliation itself. Drying her hair afterwards was not a small comfort, but a practical necessity. If she showed any sign of weakness, she would only be punished again. That could not happen. She had to secure a reward at any cost. By then, she had already prepared herself to cast aside her pride. She told herself that today's mistake had only happened because Miss Chay had flustered her at the wrong moment. Even so, excuses would not redeem her. She needed to make things right, to place herself in his position and understand how it must feel. Being treated as if she were less than human, cursed and controlled at someone else's whim, was something she could no longer ignore. The situation was too obvious, too passive. Acting with restraint would only invite further criticism and unnecessary fault-finding. Since she had already decided to abandon her pride, she resolved to take whatever she could gain from the situation. While searching through the cupboard, she discovered a set of clothes that immediately caught her attention. Excitement flickered across her face as she held them up, convinced that with this, she could manage whatever lay ahead. Yet Miss Chay continued to bother her thoughts. It had only been a brief moment, but she was certain of what she had seen. That certainty refused to fade. Her mind drifted back to the teacher's expression during the cardio session. His face had shown no fear at all. Not even a hint of hesitation. If anything, he had seemed completely unfazed. Meanwhile, in another room, Miss Chay lay awake, troubled by her own thoughts. She wondered whether all of this was truly happening. She had never imagined that Saboro and Minji could reunite in such a way, and the realization left her with an uneasy feeling, as though something terrible had already begun to unfold. There was a lingering fear that he might accuse her of being an accomplice. After all, although he had not forced her to do anything, she had still been there, watching. She did not understand why Minji had been kidnapped, but she knew one thing for certain. She needed to keep her mouth shut. Lying there in silence, worry weighed heavily on her chest. If Jiwon were to change his mind, just as Minji had, she had no idea what she would do. She did not believe she had done anything wrong to Jiwon, yet the uncertainty gnawed at her. She felt sympathy for Minji, but there was nothing she could do. Getting involved would change nothing, and she knew it. At the very least, she believed Jiwon would not go so far as to kill Minji. At first, she was shocked when he choked her. The act itself startled her, but it was not as severe as what she had seen through the screen before. Minji's reaction only added to the confusion. Instead of resisting, Minji seemed to respond as if she were enjoying it. That reaction was unsettling, frightening in a way she could not fully explain. And yet, despite the fear, she found herself unable to look away. Her eyes remained fixed on the scene. Her attention drifted to the shape of the protein bottle nearby, noticing it with strange intensity. It felt different somehow, significant in a way she could not articulate. A thought crossed her mind. Unexpected but persistent. She felt an urge to do a cardio session with him, an idea that lingered longer than it should have, refusing to be dismissed.